Laid up with a fever so high I couldn't move, I asked my eldest son to bring me just a glass of water. I thought he would at least do this much, but what my eldest son brought me was a glass full of beer. Then he splashed that beer on me, who was in bed with a high fever. From the direction of the door, I heard a ha-ha laughter, and there she was, my son's wife, clapping and laughing. My eldest son was also laughing, holding the empty cup. I couldn't believe it. I was feverish and dazed, but that scene burned clearly into my eyes. "Clean the house by the time we get back, haha." I had tolerated Mark and his wife's selfishness up to now, but I couldn't stand it any longer. "Yes, I will clean it," I said, enduring the pain in my throat so that my son and his wife could hear. "My name is Helen. I'm a 73-year-old housewife. My husband, George, is 75 years old. Now that he's retired, he teaches calligraphy to children at a nearby community center. My husband, who has been practicing calligraphy since he was young, had always dreamed of opening a calligraphy class after he retired. I was happy to see him realize his dream and head to the community center with a smile every day. We have 2 sons. The younger son is married and has 2 elementary school-aged children. However, our 44-year-old eldest son was unmarried and living with us at home. He seems to be working part-time at a convenience store at night, but that's only about 4 days a week. He doesn't contribute any money to the household, and he's just living a lazy life. Both my husband and I have warned him several times, but our eldest son didn't listen. He's not gambling or in debt, and gradually my husband and I stopped warning him. Then one day, out of the blue, our eldest son suddenly said, "I got married," and brought his wife home. Without even greeting us, she barged in as if it was the most natural thing in the world, and from that day on, I had to prepare meals for her as well. I didn't mind preparing meals for my son's wife, but she didn't help at all, nor did she clean up after meals. She didn't even say thank you, and she even demanded a cup of coffee after dinner. My husband, unable to watch any longer, harshly warned our eldest son and his wife, who then stopped making unreasonable demands in front of my husband. However, when my husband wasn't around, she started making demands like, "Mother-in-law, please take this dress to the cleaners for me." I thought she was being too selfish, and when I warned her, my son took her side. "It's just something you can do on your way to shopping. Don't be so stingy," he would say. However, our son doesn't contribute a penny to the household. Even though we're feeding him and his wife for free, I thought it was unreasonable for them to demand more, and I was considering whether or not to talk to my husband about it. However, not wanting to witness a parent-child quarrel, I decided to wait and see a little longer, and so I held back again today, and as per my daughter-in-law's request, I took her clothes to the cleaners. My husband and I usually visit our second son's family in Canada about twice a year. We were planning to visit again during the upcoming week-long federal holiday. Since we visit frequently, and they also occasionally come to visit us, our grandchildren have become very fond of us. We have already bought the toys that our grandchildren love as gifts, and we're planning to buy a roll cake as a souvenir on the way. When we visit our second son's family, we often take the sleeper train rather than the plane, enjoying the scenery along the journey. While the view from the plane is great, now that we have more leisure time, taking the train suits us better. The day before our visit, feeling unusually excited, I went shopping after seeing my husband off to his regular calligraphy class. On my way back from shopping, I stopped by a cake shop where they were selling handmade cookies. I figured the cookies would last longer than the cake, so I bought some for the grandchildren. As I made my way home, picturing the delighted faces of the grandchildren, it began to drizzle. I hurried home, but the rain gradually became heavier. I decided to stop by a nearby convenience store to buy an umbrella, but by the time I arrived, my clothes were soaked. I considered waiting out the rain at the convenience store, but not knowing when it would stop and wanting to warm up my chilled body in a hot bath, I bought an umbrella and hurried home. When I got home and was about to take a bath, my eldest son's wife came in and said, "Helen, are you about to take a bath? I have to go out now. Let me use the bath first." "Helen, please start preparing dinner early." And she closed the bathroom door. Even though it's not her house, I changed clothes and started preparing dinner, trying to ignore her. While preparing dinner, I started sneezing. It would be bad if I caught a cold right before our departure tomorrow, but my eldest son's wife, who had long been in the bath, did not come out for over an hour. The next morning, the day we were supposed to visit our second son's family, I woke up feeling sluggish. My throat hurt and my nose was running. When I checked my temperature, it was 100 degrees Fahrenheit. It seemed that I had indeed caught a cold in yesterday's rain. I told George to go alone this time because I didn't want to pass my cold on to the grandchildren. George suggested that we cancel the visit, but we already had the sleeper train tickets. We also had the toys we bought as gifts for the grandchildren, so I wanted George to visit our second son's family, even if it was just him. I gave him the cookies I bought at the cake shop the day before. Despite George's concern, I reassured him that it was just a slight fever and a minor cold, and that I would be okay after taking some medicine and resting at home. George usually doesn't talk much to our eldest son and his wife, but that day he told them I was feeling under the weather and made them promise to take care of the housework. After seeing off George with a smile, I was about to go back to bed when I heard my eldest son and his wife talking. Ugh, such a hassle. It's just a cold, right? But now that Dad's gone, we can be free for a while. I couldn't believe this was coming from the people who were living in our house without contributing to the expenses, but it was the usual for them. You do realize the only reason you're able to live here is thanks to your father, right? When I pointed this out, my eldest son Mark and his wife seemed to take offense, retorting, "We're doing you a favor by living with you in your old age." And that's right. Normally everyone would hate to live with their in-laws, the daughter-in-law added. It's ironic, as they're the ones who moved in with us without being asked, yet they act as though they're doing us a huge favor. Despite feeling sluggish and wanting to rest early, I ignored their remarks and returned to my room. That evening, my daughter-in-law came into my room and woke me up. "Mother-in-law, you're not planning on skipping cooking just because you're feeling a little sick, are you? You know I can't cook, right?" Telling your mother-in-law to cook because you can't isn't something a 35-year-old woman should say. I'm feeling sick and I want them to figure out their meals by themselves. Even my husband should have warned them before leaving in the morning. I tried to ignore them and go back to sleep, but my daughter-in-law won't leave the room. I thought it would be better to eat something light and take medicine, so I forced myself to get up and head to the kitchen to prepare some food. As I was preparing the meal, Mark came home. Despite seeing me in the kitchen wearing a mask, he didn't utter a word, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. Not only that, but he also demanded, "Hey, the bath isn't ready yet." It doesn't matter to Mark and his wife whether I'm sick or not. Knowing they wouldn't listen anyway and wanting to rest as soon as possible, I finished preparing the meal and went to prepare the bath. When I returned to the living room, Mark and his wife were having a lively conversation while eating. "We're going on a trip abroad the day after tomorrow, so please don't spread your cold to us." Surprised by their sudden mention of a trip abroad, I ate a light meal in the dining room, away from the warm living room, as my daughter-in-law suggested. In the living room, the couple was excited about their upcoming trip abroad. Mark is taking time off his part-time job, and they're going on a 3-week trip to Europe. I hadn't heard anything about them going on a trip abroad, but I was grateful that they wouldn't be home starting from the day after tomorrow. On the morning of the day Mark and his wife were about to leave for their trip, my cold had worsened to the point where I couldn't get out of bed. When I measured my temperature with the thermometer, I had nearly a 103-degree Fahrenheit fever. I was thirsty, but my headache was so severe that I couldn't even lift my head. In this state, Mark came to me. "Hey, cook us some food. You can still cook even if you have a cold." Tears welled up in my eyes at the sight of my son telling his sick mother to cook. "Eat out," I managed to say. At my words, Mark frowned, but said nothing and started to leave the room. Before he left the room, I asked him to bring me a glass of water. I thought he would at least do that much for me, so I waited, but what Mark brought me was a glass full of beer. And he splashed that beer all over me, who was bedridden with a high fever. From the direction of the door, a loud laughter echoed. When I turned to look, it was my eldest son's wife, clapping her hands in amusement. In front of me, my eldest son Mark was also laughing, holding an empty cup. It was unbelievable. Although I was dazed with fever, that sight was burned clearly into my memory. "Make sure you clean the house before we get back, haha," I had tolerated Mark and his wife's selfishness up to now, but I couldn't stand it any longer. "Yes, I'll keep it clean." I mustered the strength to say loud enough for them to hear, despite the pain in my throat. After that, Mark and his wife cheerfully left the house. I didn't even have the energy to wipe the beer-soaked mess from my face, and I fell asleep as I was. When I woke up, I felt somewhat refreshed. With a groggy head, I remember being splashed with beer by Mark, but surprisingly, I didn't feel sticky at all. The covers of my beds were also changed. Just as I was questioning what happened, my husband George came in with a basin. Seeing me sitting up, he placed his hand on my forehead and asked, "Are you okay?" "Why is George here? Wasn't he supposed to be with our second son's family?" I tried to ask but couldn't voice it out. Noticing my confusion, George began to explain. He had taken the sleeper train to visit our second son's family, but he was worried about me and decided to return early. He didn't trust Mark and his wife to take care of anyone. Our second son's family also suggested he should hurry back, so he flew home. When he arrived, he found me lying exhausted in bed with a strange smell of beer lingering around. He quickly cleaned my face with a damp towel, tidied up the area, and cared for me while I slept for a full day. When George asked me what had happened, I tried to explain, but my voice failed me. The memory of being splashed with beer by Mark brought tears to my eyes. Seeing this, George brought me some water and said, "Sorry, I shouldn't have asked you now. Just rest for now." He then went to prepare me some porridge. It turned out he had prepared the porridge so it would be ready whenever I woke up. The kindness of George brought tears to my eyes again. Thanks to George's care, I regained my energy in about 2 days. When I told George what had happened while he was gone, his face turned stern. "I can't stand it anymore." Yes, me too. 3 weeks passed since Mark and his wife left for their overseas trip. While I was enjoying peaceful days with George, my phone rang. It was a call from Mark. "Here it comes," I said, pressing the answer button. "What the hell? Why is our house gone?" "Well, didn't you say to clean the house?" Haha. After I recovered from the cold, I told George everything about Mark and his wife's actions. How they forced a sick me to take care of things. How they threw beer on me, who was bedridden with a high fever, and went on an overseas trip themselves. After hearing my story, George muttered, "I can't stand it anymore." Until now, I had always been the one to calm George down, but after this incident, I didn't feel like pacifying him anymore, because I myself couldn't forgive them. Actually, my husband George and I had been secretly planning to build a new house without telling our eldest son and his wife. The house isn't finished yet, but we moved into a monthly rental apartment and sold our house in order to stun them with the news. We had been told that someone wanted to buy our land to build a shop, so the sale happened quickly. Originally, we had planned to keep the old house for our eldest son and his wife, but after the way they treated us, there's no need to consider them anymore. The place has already been turned into an empty lot, so they must have been shocked to find the house gone. The new house will be completed in about 2 weeks. A carpenter we know has allowed us to store our belongings and furniture there in advance, as we've explained the situation to him. We dispose of all of our eldest son's and his wife's belongings. When we told him this, our eldest son shouted, "Are you kidding me? I'll report you to the police." His wife was also yelling in the background. At that moment, my husband George took over the phone and I switched it to speaker mode. He said to our eldest son in a low voice, "Go ahead, tell the police. I'll tell them too. You guys threw beer at your sick mother and then went on a vacation abroad. You even forced her to do housework while she was sick. Who do you guys think is a bigger sinner, you guys or us for disposing of your things?" My husband's face as he spoke to our eldest son was like a villain's. "This has nothing to do with that. In selling the house, where are we supposed to live? Where are you guys even staying?" Our son yelled back. George replied, "That house was originally ours. It's our right to sell it. Plus, you're no longer our son. Don't contact us anymore." And then he hung up. 2 weeks later, we got a call saying that our new house was completed, so George and I headed over. The call was from the carpenter, a friend of George's. He's about 60 years old and the site supervisor. He showed us around the house, explaining the layout. We designed it as a single-story, accessible house, keeping our future retirement life in mind. It's an even more beautiful house than we imagined, and we can't wait to start living there. The furniture we had left in the living room had been moved by the carpenters. When I thanked them, they laughed and said, "No problem. George really helped us out back in the day, so this is nothing." And so the two of us, George and I, started living in our new house. The house was even more comfortable than we had imagined, and our life was peaceful without our eldest son and his wife around. However, about a month after we moved into the new house, our devilish eldest son and his wife showed up. Neither George nor I had told them our address, and our younger son Mark and his wife shouldn't have told them either, because we explained the situation. They probably hired a detective or something to find us. "Hey, it's not fair for you to sell the house, dispose of our stuff, and then move to such a nice place by yourselves. As your eldest son, I have the right to live here, don't I?" said our son, glaring at us with large bags in his hands. We had intended to cut off ties with them, but we were stunned to see our eldest son and his wife, who were clearly intent on moving in. Just then, George came from the back of the house. "What are you guys here for?" "To what end? After taking our living place, how dare you ask such a thing? From today, we're living here too." As they were about to step in, the front door opened. "Huh? Mark, what are you doing here? Here to cause trouble again? Come on, you're old enough to stand on your own 2 feet. Stephen said with a look of disbelief on his face. Beside him were his wife with their 2 grandchildren. They were visiting because the new house had just been finished. After relaxing at home for a while, Steven's family had gone to a nearby convenience store. "Who is that? Are they bad people?" The 5th grader, Sophia, said it so innocently. The husband who had just been about to drive Mark and his wife away suddenly had an idea. "While Steven's family is staying for a week, you two should also stay here. I won't allow you to squat here indefinitely, though." With that, he welcomed everyone at the entrance into the house. The living room gathered, and the first to lounge on the sofa was Mark and his wife. "Man, I'm beat, mother-in-law. Can I have some coffee?" "I'll take mine black." Steven's wife was taken aback by the casually made request of Mark and his wife. At this, the grandchildren rushed to Mark and his wife. "Why can't you two do that yourselves when you're adults? Even I, a kid, can pour my own juice." The innocent comments of the grandchildren made Mark's wife uncomfortable, and she went to pour her own coffee. However, the grandchildren's why attack continued. "Why can't you cook even though you're an adult woman? My mom can cook anything." "Why don't you clean up after yourself? Both my dad and I always clean up the plates when we're done eating." "Why can't you do that? My sister and I always do it ourselves." The grandchildren, perhaps due to good upbringing by Stephen's wife, are responsible and often help her. Stephen also doesn't just leave everything to his wife, and they work together. Therefore, it was probably perplexing for the grandchildren that Mark and his wife didn't do anything themselves. At first, Mark and his wife had retorted, but the why attacks didn't stop, and by the end of the week, they were both exhausted. Mark's wife in particular seemed to dislike being called auntie. "Don't call me auntie," she told the grandchildren in earnest. But when they replied, "Why not? You're an auntie, aren't you? You're not young enough to be called sister," she was shocked. Even I and Stephen, who were listening nearby, couldn't help but laugh. After Stephen and his wife left, we sent Mark and his wife away. They were worn out by our children's incessant, "Why are you attacking us?" so we were able to drive them away without much resistance. However, a few months later, we received a message asking, "Can you lend us some money?" Up until now, they had been staying in our home, eating our food without paying a cent in rent or living expenses. Since Mark, our eldest son, was making enough money from his convenience store job to cover all expenses, it wasn't a problem at all. Now that they had been kicked out of the house, Mark and his wife were supposed to start paying for their own rent and living expenses. Yet they kept spending money as they used to, seemingly living off borrowed money without any savings to speak of. Their only income was Mark's salary from working at a convenience store 4 days a week. Mark's wife, it seemed, had no intention of working. Considering their situation, it was audacious, to say the least, for them to ask, "Can you lend us some money?" "We will never lend you money in the future, nor will we help you," we told them, and then blocked Mark's number. A few days later, while my husband and I were out, we received a call on my husband's phone from our home security company. There was an intruder in our house, and they sent us the video footage. It turned out that Mark and his wife were trying to sneak into our house through a window. It was pitiful that they were resorting to breaking into their parents' house to steal money because they were broke. At least they hadn't caused trouble for others, but that's not saying much. Mark and his wife were quickly apprehended by the security and were taken away by the police, who were called to the scene. They were released because they were family, but not before being harshly scolded. Since then, Mark and his wife stopped forcing their way into our house or trying to break in. We have both blocked their calls, so we never receive phone calls from them. According to Steven, our second son, he also received a request for money from Mark. Apparently, Mark had borrowed money from loan sharks and was now on the run because he couldn't pay it back. "You reap what you sow, pay back the money you borrowed yourself," Steven said, and blocked Mark's number as well. We don't know what happened to Mark and his wife after that, but we chose to forget about the people who would laugh as they poured beer over a sick person. With no involvement with Mark and his wife, my husband and I are enjoying our peaceful, everyday lives. My husband used to teach calligraphy classes at the nearby community center, but now he teaches at home in a room we designed for that purpose. When Stephen and his family come to visit, the grandchildren and other children take calligraphy classes together, and they seem to be having a good time making friends. I am grateful for these peaceful days and am making the most of each day.
Cake? No need for it. Go ahead and toss it out. That's what my husband said on my birthday. And had the audacity to go on a trip with his mistress. I had hoped this would be our last chance. But it seems I was mistaken. I really don't think I can continue living with you anymore. Understood. In that case, I'll do as you said. Throw out the cake. And I'll throw out something else that's important to you as well. And then, prepare yourself. Because I'm going to throw out the thing that is most unnecessary to me. My name is Sarah. I'm a 28-year-old office worker. My husband, Bob, also works in an office, although it's a different company. We don't have any children. Bob and I met a year ago. It was at a party held by a senior colleague from work. I'm rather plain, a bit overweight, introverted, and gloomy. And my hobby is reading comic books. An indoor type of person. So I was invited to the party only to make up the numbers. Also, I knew this, so I didn't join the conversation much and was just drinking my beverage at the edge of the table. Still, out of all the participants there, Bob, who was the most handsome, outgoing, and good at conversing, for some reason, actively started talking to me. Bob enjoys traveling and collecting vintage vinyl records, and he told me stories about his travels and old music, which were really interesting. When it was time to go home, he asked for my contact details, and though I was surprised, we exchanged our contact information on Facebook, and the very next day, he messaged me, "I'd like to meet up. Just the two of us next time." I was so surprised that at first, I wondered if this was some kind of punishment game, or if he was going to try to sell me something. But I was happy, so I agreed, and we had a meal together on a later date. After that, he frequently asked me out, and after a few dates, he confessed his feelings for me. I had never had a boyfriend in my life before, so I was overjoyed at my first ever confession and accepted it. And then, about 3 months after we started dating, he proposed, and we got married. I thought it was like a dream that someone as ordinary and boring as me could marry such a wonderful person, and I believed that a happy life was about to start. But as soon as we got married, Bob's attitude completely changed. When we were dating, he was very kind, but once we got married, he started pushing all the household chores on me and would just laze around watching TV or listening to records in his room when he got back from work. I don't know if it's because the volume of the records is loud, but when I call out, "Dinner's ready," he doesn't seem to hear me, and often doesn't come right away, which irritates me. On his days off, he leaves me alone and goes out to play, saying he has plans with friends or colleagues from work. When I say, "Please help me with the household chores a little," he replies, "I'm working, you know." When I tell him I'm working too, "I'd appreciate it if you could at least help with the household chores on your days off," he says, "I'm busy even on my days off because I have to hang out with my friends, unlike you, who don't have many friends because you're so gloomy." Ain't that last remark just awful? Sure, I'm not exactly Miss Social Butterfly due to my personality. I get it, but to say such things to my face? That's just plain rude, ain't it? That was what I thought, but I didn't want to start a fight, so I kept it to myself. Gradually, Bob started nitpicking about the way I cook and clean, and before long, he started hurling insults like, "You should be grateful that a great guy like me even bothered to marry a plain and overweight woman like you. I thought a real gentleman wouldn't say such things to his wife and would also help with housework. In fact, if he's got issues with the way I clean, I wish he'd at least clean his own room. The only thing he takes care of is his record collection. Also, I love reading comic books, and I've collected quite a few over the years. But one day, I found that all the comic books I had in my room had vanished. I asked Bob, suspecting the worst, and he said, "Oh, those? They were in the way, so I threw them out." I can't believe it. Those were important to me. Some of them were even out of print, hard to get. I protested, but he just said, "Well, your comic books were starting to overflow from your room into the living room. Besides, you should outgrow this childish hobby of reading comic books." How dare he criticize my hobbies? Not to mention, throwing away my stuff without even asking me? Unforgivable. If he's going to be this awful and verbally abusive, why did he even marry me? Probably Bob just wanted a free housekeeper, I guess. And when he met me at a party and saw that I was quiet and submissive, he must have thought I was an easy target. Realizing this, I've spent many nights crying in bed. It's manageable now. But if we were to have kids, I shudder to think what the future might hold. One day, a friend told me she saw Bob walking arm in arm with a woman who wasn't me in the hotel district. Just yesterday, he said he was going out to meet a friend. I was under the impression that this friend was a man. What does it mean he was meeting a woman? Could he be cheating? With these suspicions, I hired a private investigator. As expected, It turned out that Bob was cheating on me. The other woman was a junior colleague from his office, a woman named Susan. He had been cheating on me since we got married. Whenever he said he was going out to meet friends or colleagues, it was mostly dates with Susan. How dare he dump all the housework on me and then play around? I'm going to divorce him, I thought, and even consulted a lawyer. But even so, I couldn't completely hate Bob, who allowed even a plain and boring woman like me to dream a little about marriage. So I decided to make one last bet. This coming Saturday is my birthday. If Bob would celebrate the day with me, I thought I would hold off on the divorce. At dinner, I said to Bob, "Bob, do you remember what's coming up this Saturday?" "Huh? Saturday? Is there something special going on?" I was a little shocked to realize that he had completely forgotten. At this point, my hopes were dashed again, but I continued the conversation. "It's my birthday." "Oh, yeah, now that you mention it. Well, it falls on a day off this year, so I was thinking of getting a cake and having it together." "Ah, you promise, right?" "Absolutely do not make any other plans, okay?" With a somewhat praying feeling, Sarah said this to Bob, who seemed reluctant. And then it was the Friday before her birthday. During dinner, Bob said, "I have a business trip tomorrow." "What? Tomorrow is my birthday, and we promised to eat cake together. I've already made a reservation." When I said that, he said, "Well, it's work. I can't help it. Show some understanding for your husband's work. Anyway, I'm going on a business trip tomorrow. It's for 2 days and 1 night, so I'll be back on Sunday evening. Please pack for me." "Well, what about the cake I reserved?" When I asked. "Just throw it away if you don't need it." He casually said, "What is that?" Despite it being my special birthday and going through the trouble of reserving a cake, he so nonchalantly said to throw it away. Is it really a business trip? Feeling suspicious, I checked his smartphone while Bob was in the shower. There, I found his exchanges with his mistress. "Shall we go somewhere on a trip this Saturday for 2 days and 1 night?" "Sounds good. I want to go camping. How about it?" "Then I'll make a reservation at a lodge." "Are you sure your wife hasn't found out? Are you okay?" "I'm okay. She's oblivious. Actually, this Saturday is Sarah's birthday. She said let's celebrate together, but it's a hassle. I don't want her to start demanding gifts and stuff, so I thought I'd go on a trip with you." "Wow, that's terrible. Your wife must be so sad." I almost cried from the shock, but somehow managed to hold back and took a screenshot of their conversation on my smartphone. I didn't particularly want gifts or anything. If you had simply agreed to eat cake with me, I would have still had a glimmer of belief that you might care about me a bit. Seeing the messages between you and your mistress shattered that last bit of hope. Enough. I'm done with it. Then, on my birthday, Bob so audaciously demanding at the front door, "Well, I'm heading out. While I'm on a business trip, clean my room for me." "Okay. By the way, I'm going to pick up the cake we reserved today. You still want me to throw away your share of the cake, right?" "You're nagging. I said it's fine." "Understood. I'll clean your room, and I'll throw away anything that I think you don't need anymore. That's okay with you, right?" "Yeah, it's fine. I'm heading out now." With that, Bob left for what he claimed to be a business trip, but was in reality a trip with his mistress. Remember when I asked, "Is it okay if I throw away anything I think you don't need?" And you said, "Yeah, it's fine"? I recorded our conversation on a voice recorder, so there's no taking it back now. Well, once inside Bob's room, I vacuumed and wiped the windows. Next, I disposed of the unwanted items. Old clothes, piles of stationery, and the record collection that Bob had been amassing. It took quite a bit of money and effort to collect those records, I recall. I packed up all these items and put them in the storeroom. Then I placed the filled-out divorce papers on the living room table and left the house. Now, it's my birthday after all. I'm going to enjoy it just as I like. First, I went to pick up the reserved cake. After that, I booked a room in a luxury hotel I had always wanted to visit and ate the cake in my hotel room. Bob said, "Throw it away." But I couldn't bring myself to waste food, so I ate both portions. It was delicious, but I might gain weight again, so I really need to start dieting. I then went shopping in the nearby stores and took a stroll by the sea close by. I had spent my days off doing housework until now, so this kind of leisure day was a first in a long time. Just as I was thinking about this, I received a call from Bob on Sunday night. Honestly, I didn't want to answer, but I had no choice. Hello? Hey, where the heck are you? I got back from my business trip and you're not home, and there's no dinner ready. How annoying. He's ruining the relaxing ambiance of my luxury hotel stay. Well, I'm staying in a hotel for a bit, for reasons. There's a lovely sea nearby. Would you like me to send you a picture? What are you talking about? I don't care about that. Why are you in a hotel? Where's my dinner? Also, I found divorce papers. What's going on? What's going on? Well, if there are divorce papers, you should know what to do, right? Are you planning to make a paper airplane with it? You can't be that stupid. Just sign your name on it and take it to the city hall. So you want a divorce? That's right. Honestly, I'm sick and tired of it. Bob just leaves me alone to play on his day off, and he never helps me with the household chores. From the very beginning, the first thing he does when he calls me is get mad because I haven't prepared dinner. I thought it was unbelievable. What's up with that? And when I looked in the room, my collection of records was gone. What happened? Oh, I threw away the records. As I say that, Bob's voice raises even higher. You threw them away? Are you kidding me? Why? You knew I cherished those. But Bob, you told me before your business trip that I could throw away anything I deemed unnecessary. You said it was okay, so I did. I even have our conversation recorded. Want to listen? And besides, you also threw away my beloved comics, didn't you? Anyway, don't just drop divorce papers on me and leave. I get it. Then let's meet and talk for once. And so a few days later, honestly, I didn't want to see Bob anymore. But I had no choice but to have a discussion at the lawyer's office. Bob, whom I hadn't seen in several days, was in shabby clothes and had unkempt hair. I was the one who used to iron his clothes. I think the conditioner was about to run out. Maybe that's why his hair was so messy. But he should be able to buy conditioner by himself, I think. Seeing Bob in such a sloppy state, I wonder why I ever liked such a person. I'm glad. I had worried about how I would feel if I no longer wanted to divorce after seeing Bob again. But it seems that was needless worry. And then the discussion began. I'll say this first. I haven't changed my mind about wanting to divorce. This is the amount I want as alimony. Seeing the amount I suggested, Bob screamed, $30 million? Sarah, that's way too much. Just because I didn't help with the housework? Just because he didn't help with the housework? What is this man talking about? That's not all. You've also constantly insulted me, calling me fat and plain. And worst of all, this. Saying that, I pulled out evidence of infidelity that I had researched at the detective agency. I also show him the screenshot of our smartphone conversation at that time. You've been cheating since we got married, even on my birthday, lying about a business trip to go on a vacation with your mistress? Considering all this, $30 million is still not enough. So, Sarah, did you know about the affair? Looking at the photos, Bob turns pale. Yes. Did you think I didn't notice because I'm dense? Don't make fun of me. And you threw away my beloved comics, remember? But that's because you threw away my records. Oh, the records? I lied about throwing them away. Surprised Bob, I explain. Actually, I thought about throwing them away, but I felt it would be too cruel, and I didn't want to be held responsible for throwing them away, so I didn't. The records are stored in the back of the storeroom. What? Seeing Bob's relieved face, I say, why are you looking so relieved? The fact that you threw away my comics hasn't changed, so you should compensate for that. And about the cake, you said throw it away? But I couldn't disrespect food, so I ate both portions. So you didn't throw away anything? When Bob sought confirmation, I told him with a chuckle, there's no need for that. I declared to you, I discard anything I don't need. And I've done just that. Well, actually, I'm about to do it. Huh? Bob seemed unable to comprehend. With a deeper smile, I told him, "You. Yes, you. You're the thing I need the least. I'm going to get rid of you completely. Once you understand that, please divorce. There's no way the alimony will be less than this amount. If you argue, it'll be higher." When I said this, Bob pleaded, "I'm sorry. I won't cheat anymore, and I'll help with the housework because you're here." "Because I'm here? What? So you can go on dates with your mistress without any worry, dumping the chores on me during your days off? No, that's not it. Bob babbled. "No matter what you say, I intend a divorce. I don't like holding on to trash because I'm a neat freak," I retorted. After I said that, Bob fell apart, stammering, "I'm trash?" His expression at that moment was priceless. Afterwards, we divorced. Since the divorce, all communication has been through our lawyer, so I haven't seen Bob since. However, according to stories my lawyer shared, Bob, having left all the housework to me, had no domestic skills. He briefly cohabited with Susan, but apparently she too couldn't do housework. Their place quickly became a mess. Their diet was all over the place. Because they were constantly eating out, Bob started gaining weight, and his once handsome face now looks quite regrettable. It seems Susan broke up with Bob and moved on to another job. Furthermore, it became gossip at work that Bob and Susan were having an affair, causing him discomfort. But he can't quit because the alimony I requested is substantial. I've switched jobs and moved, and now I'm enjoying living alone. I'm not run ragged by housework like before. No one gives me a hard time, and I'm happy. Plus, maybe because I'm not stressed anymore, my face is brighter, and I've been told I look a little thinner. If I continue to lose weight, even though I don't plan to see him again, I might make Bob regret even more.
Wait, you're going to sleep in there? I was supposed to be house-sitting with my niece at my elder brother's house while he and his wife were on a trip. As we were joyfully discussing our plans for the following day, my niece reached for the closet door, signaling her intent to go to bed. She slid into the closet without a moment's hesitation, leaving me surprised. When I rushed to grab her arm, she looked up at me with a puzzled expression. I am a 24-year-old housewife named Melissa, and I have a brother who is 5 years older than me. We lost our parents early in life, and having always gotten along, we continued to support each other. That didn't change even after we each got married, and we still maintain close family ties. My in-laws are great, but they live in Alaska, a plane ride away, so we can't rely on them easily. My brother, Sam, and his wife had a shotgun wedding. After clashing with her parents, she has been estranged ever since. With no nearby relatives to rely on, our relationship has been one of mutual support without reserve. It was only strengthened when Sam and his wife had a daughter, and 4 years later, a girl was born to my family as well. The daughters, who lived in the same city, grew up close, almost like real sisters. As the years went by and my niece Sarah was about to turn 10, Sam told me about his plans for a 10th wedding anniversary trip. "If it's okay with you, Melissa, could you look after Sarah while we're away? It's just a short overnight trip nearby, but we thought it'd be nice to spend some time alone." I was only too happy to oblige. When we discussed dates and when I asked when I should pick Sarah up, he shook his head as if I didn't understand. It seemed that he wanted me to stay over at his house with Sarah, concerned about leaving the house empty for security reasons. I teased him about being overly worried, but finally gave in. I decided to stay over alone, leaving my daughter, who still has a little anxiety about sleepovers, with my husband. The day of their anniversary trip came as planned, and I went to stay at Sam's house. I held Sarah's hand as we waved goodbye to her parents. She looked a bit uneasy, watching their backs, but our house-sitting adventure was about to begin. I originally planned to bring my daughter over and have my husband pick her up at bedtime, but Sarah adamantly refused, so I gave up. I know she enjoys playing with my daughter, and although she won't tell me why she doesn't want her here today, there must be some reason. So, to cheer up a disappointed Sarah, I promised to take her to my house to play after breakfast the next day, which made her eyes light up. Sarah usually tailors her play with my daughter, so I brought some slightly complex games and puzzles that adults could enjoy as well. As I spread them out, I asked her what she wanted to play with. We spent her time playing games and cooking dinner together, but throughout, Sarah stayed close to me, constantly glancing around nervously. At first, I thought she might be lonely without her parents or still nervous, but her behavior didn't change even after a few hours. So I asked her if something was bothering her. But no matter how many times I asked, she said, "No, it's nothing," and she didn't tell me what was on her mind. Sarah's behavior seemed like she was on guard against something invisible. Only when it was time for me to go to bed did I finally understand what that meant. Sarah changed into her pajamas, opened the door of the closet with a smile, and said that she was going to sleep early today and leave for my house in the morning. In the closet, there was a bed. I couldn't figure out when it had been prepared. As I was trying to grasp the situation, Sarah quickly lay down on the bed and said goodnight while trying to close the door. "Hold on, Sarah, are you going to sleep in there?" I asked, my voice raising with surprise, to which Sarah answered with a serious face. "Yes, but it's okay. I'll leave it open just a little. If I hear anything, I'll wake up right away." Hiding my confusion, I invited Sarah to sleep with me. After some hesitation, Sarah finally agreed and joined me in my bed. She said that she wanted to leave the bed in the closet as a hiding place. I didn't understand why, but I told her it was absolutely fine. As cheerfully as possible, I asked her why she needed a hiding place. After making me promise not to laugh, she whispered, "The monster will come." Just hearing that might make you think she was still a sweet, innocent girl, but the story that followed was enough to make me believe in the existence of this monster. Sarah was shaking, clutching onto my arm. "The monster is really scary and clever. It only comes on the days when Daddy isn't home. If the monster comes, Mommy has to fight it off and I mustn't leave the closet until she does. Mommy always cries while she's fighting. I once tried to help her, but I got so scared when the monster started banging on the closet door." I hugged the trembling Sarah and sighed deeply in my heart. Probably this monster does exist, and it's not some trick to get a child to bed. Discovering my brother's wife's affair in such an unexpected way made me feel lost. If this monster was my sister-in-law's lover, it wouldn't come to this house while she wasn't around. However, Sarah believes that the monster comes on the days when Daddy isn't home. Today, while my brother is away, the evidence is that she stayed close to me all day, guarding the windows and entrance. Considering my kind-hearted niece Sarah and my brother who trusts his wife, I felt a surge of anger towards my sister-in-law. But more than that, I wanted to reassure Sarah right now. I held her hand and smiled at her. "It's okay, Auntie's here today. You said the monster is clever, right? Then it'll be surprised to see a stranger and won't come into the house. And your mommy, who is always targeted by the monster, is with Daddy today, so the monster can't get close to her." Still, Sarah, who does not know the true identity of the monster, keeps her face clouded with anxiety. The more time passes, the more she begins to fear that the monster will attack soon. She suggested we hide in the closet together, so I tried to calm her down by encouraging her to share anything that worries her about the monster. I thought she would eventually get sleepy as I take away her fears one by one. However, when I heard more from Sarah, I knew I couldn't just sit back. Instead of putting her to bed, I immediately took her out of the house without changing her clothes. I rushed home in my own car and explained the situation to my husband and arranged for him and his friends to stay overnight at Sam's house. Around 10 p.m. on the day that my husband and his friends went on their way, I received a phone call from Sam asking about Sarah. "Has Sarah already gone to bed? You shouldn't forget about your husband and daughter once in a while, and have a good sleep. Make sure you lock up the house. Good night." After asking about Sarah, he told me to lock the door before I go to bed. He strongly warned me not to leave the house, and it took all my strength not to let my voice tremble. After ending the call, I looked at Sarah, who was sleeping peacefully with my daughter, and vowed to drive out the monster. The next morning, my husband returned from my brother's house. I trembled with fear and anger at the sight of my husband telling me about the events of the previous night. I was relieved that my judgment the day before had been correct. My family spent the rest of the day at home with Sarah, waiting for my brother and his wife to come pick her up. Upon seeing me, my brother sternly questioned why Sarah and I had left the house at night. "Why didn't you sleep at our house? I asked you many times not to leave the house, didn't I? You said you understood, but what were you thinking when you just went home on your own?" The protest from him, accusing me of breaking my promise, made me feel uncomfortable. I coldly asked him why he, being on a trip, knew that we were not home. Then he replied while avoiding eye contact, "Well, we gave Sarah a smartphone with a GPS function." If that was true, he wouldn't have insisted so much on not leaving the house during the phone call the night before. If he had checked the GPS, he would have easily known that we were not at his house. Suppressing my urge to confront Sam immediately, I continued the conversation quietly so as not to be heard by the kids in the other room. "By the way, 2 unknown men came to your house late last night. Who are they? Why would they come to a house that's supposed to be occupied only by Sarah and me in the middle of the night?" "Suspicious individuals? I'm glad you're safe." His voice was trembling, but it was not from the fear of the suspicious individuals or the relief that his daughter was safe. He seemed to be choosing his words carefully, and his gaze was darting around. "Hey, about those guys." I pressed my brother, who was not giving clear answers about who those men might be, but my voice was cut off by my brother's wife, Kate. Whether she was worried about us talking any further, she began calling Sarah forcefully and said they were going home. When Sarah, who had been playing in another room, heard her mother's voice, she came out. Kate pulled her hand away with obvious strength. Then Sam suddenly changed his attitude and said, "I don't forgive you for what happened, but I'm leaving today," and began to push Sarah back to leave the room. My brother and his wife tried to force Sarah to leave with them. When I tried to talk them out of leaving, they ignored me and did not even look back. Seeing Sarah reaching out to me in resistance to her parents, I hastily pulled her towards me. "Hey, what are you doing?" Caught off guard, Kate let go of Sarah's hand and cried out, but I shielded Sarah behind me, putting some distance between us and the couple. They spouted aggressive words, attempting to reclaim their daughter, and stormed towards us in a rage. My husband and I managed to force them out of the room, asserting that we would never allow them to take Sarah away. A police officer who had been waiting at the entrance instantly detained the couple. The police officers were trying to call my brother and his wife, who were totally confused by the unexpected situation. Sam insisted to the officer that we should be the ones apprehended, claiming, "They won't give back my daughter. My sister and her husband took her from our home and are keeping her here. Please rescue her quickly. This isn't the time to hold me down. I won't run or hide, so let me go." Our daughter, who had noticed the commotion and came out, hid behind me and spoke with Sarah in a baffled manner, discussing that she was not looked up at all. Not sure whether Sam heard their conversation, but he sternly told Sarah to come with him. But she was too frightened by her father's intense anger to leave my side. Kate simply stood quietly next to the officer, glancing at my brother as if she had something to say to him and Sarah, but didn't. When my brother, who was causing a scene at the entrance, was completely restrained by the officer, my husband held up his smartphone in front of my brother's eyes. Noticing this, I told Sarah and our daughter to wait again in the previous room and close the door to keep the sound from leaking. Once my husband confirmed this, he silently started playing a video he had filmed at my brother's house the night before. Upon seeing it, the couple's faces instantly turned pale. The video began with the house key slowly turning and two men, apparently using a duplicate key, quietly entering the room. The men, in a good mood from their appearance, greeted my husband and his friends, mentioning my brother's name. "You guys are guests too, huh?" they said. One of them joked, "Hey, how much did you pay? He said I could get a 30% discount because the woman is his own sister, haha." They looked at my husband and his friends with a smirk on their faces. When my husband's friend gave a vague response, avoiding a direct answer, one of them boasted about the specific amount of money. He said that they were good friends with my brother and his wife and that they were able to get a discount from them. They continued, "We're lucky we get to play with the kid today, too." And the man's profile as he laughed was hideously villainous, to the point where calling him a monster would be an insult to a monster. I couldn't see the screen from where I was, but the audio alone was enough to give me goosebumps. Afterwards, my husband's friend started grilling the men, asking if they often visited his house and if they always came in pairs. They seemed to notice something was amiss and started asking where Sarah and I were. Upon seeing my husband's angry expression as he stated we weren't there, they seemed to finally realize the situation. Realizing they were not among friends, the men hastily fled. It was unclear whether they hadn't noticed my husband's recording until the end or if they had intentionally not disclosed it. It seems like my brother, who is supposed to be a close friend of them, has never heard of the video before. He is trembling. He desperately insisted he knew nothing and was being framed. Until I watched the video, I thought my brother was innocent and that my sister-in-law had planned everything. But there's clear evidence in the video that my brother Sam handed over to me and little Sarah. No one was convinced by him pretending to know nothing, and he was taken away by the police. Kate was pretending to have no involvement, but the officers who had previously heard from Sarah had many questions for her, so they requested her to come along, and thus Sam and Kate were both taken into custody. Later, during the police investigation, Sam and Kate confessed everything and were arrested on the spot. Apparently, Kate used to invite men over to her house on the nights when Sam was working and received money. Once she realized there was a particular demand for children, she took advantage of Sarah, making sure not to violate the law. To help her mother, who was being bullied by some nasty people, innocent Sarah did as she was told and posed for photos. These were mere pictures of a child with no suggestive connotations whatsoever. Kate would take these innocent photos with a disposable camera, have them developed, and then show them to her clients, instigating a kind of bidding war. Moreover, she would only lend out the photos, never selling them. As much as I despised her for this, if that was all there was to it, it should have ended as a matter of no concern to my husband and me. When Sam noticed Kate's business, he didn't scold her or try to protect their daughter. Instead, he started to gather men who would become their clients. He figured that if he increased the number of employees, the revenue would also increase. With this simple logic, he decided to involve me in his business. Of course I would never agree to this if he simply asked. So he came up with a plan to force me to work and use photos from the scene as a continued threat. Thus, they carefully picked a day when the neighbors were not around and locked me and Sarah in their house. Then they exchanged their house key for a large sum of money and left on a vacation to prove they had nothing to do with what was happening. What Sam and Kate didn't foresee was Sarah, who used to obey Kate's every word, revealed the situation to protect me. Sarah didn't understand most of the conversations happening at home, but she knew that the nasty people were targeting us. She confided in me, and that's when the hellish situation in Sam's house was exposed. That night, after learning about Sarah's situation, I asked my husband to capture the nasty people's activities on camera. Their unguarded information spill helped the police to act immediately after I reported them. At the same time, I made a report to the Child Welfare Services to ensure Sarah's safety. We informed the police about Sam and Kate coming to our house and had them arrested, finally protecting Sarah from the two of them. My brother and sister-in-law, who were arrested on severe charges such as violations of child welfare laws and the laws to prevent prostitution, did not escape imprisonment despite being first-time offenders. The pictures of the child that had been taken and stored over several years were deemed particularly egregious. Once an image is leaked on the internet, it can never be removed completely. I was chilled to the bone when the police told us this, but luckily, because Kate hadn't digitized the photos of Sarah or sold them and had kept them securely stored, we were able to prevent any leaks. I don't understand how my once kind and reliable brother Sam could turn into such a horrific person. We had been helping each other out normally up until then, and it scares me that we had no idea he had become so twisted. Anyway, I hope they will face the reality of what they had done. After the arrest of Sam and Kate, the monsters who were likewise questioned by the police later seemed to argue that they were innocent since it was just an attempted crime. However, the fact that someone's child's photograph was found in their house and that they seemed to be involved in some kind of other crimes confessed by Sam and Kate during the investigation led to their arrest on multiple charges as well. After dealing with the monsters and their associates lurking around us, we then inquired at the Child Protective Services about what would happen with Sarah. With both her parents arrested and no one to care for her, it was decided that Sarah would be taken away from her parents, who were absolutely unfit as guardians. That was a relief, but Sam and I don't have parents, and my sister-in-law's family has cut all ties. We learned that if we can't find someone who's willing to take her in after reaching out to the family of my sister-in-law, she would have to go to a foster care facility. After consulting with my husband, we decided to adopt Sarah. She was, after all, a person I owed a lot to, and I didn't want to part ways with Sarah, whom I adore as if she were my own daughter. Luckily, my husband agreed, and we took this opportunity to move to the countryside where my in-laws live. My daughter was excited to spend more weekends with her beloved grandparents and was overjoyed that her wish for an older sister came true with the arrival of Sarah, whom she adores. Finally freed from her parents, Sarah, with her remarkable adaptability as a child, is already getting used to her new environment as an older sister and is starting to live a peaceful and happy life.
Enough is enough. Just because your son is a doctor, you think you can leech off him? That's not going to happen.
Anna, my son's wife, glares at us and starts clinging to my son, Jack.
I can't stand the idea of your parents taking the money you earned from me, Jack. Please cut ties with your parents.
Even Jack seemed taken aback by her boldness. Cut ties? We don't have to go that far. But Anna didn't back down.
Baby, why won't you listen to me? Are your parents more important to you than me?
Seeing Anna's exaggerated, tearful display, Jack panics. No, it's not like that. I'll listen to anything you say, Anna. Soothing Anna, Jack turns to us, laughing awkwardly. Sorry, Mom. So, like Anna said, I'm gonna cut ties with you now. Seems like Jack is totally manipulated by Anna. My last hope was to ask Jack, "Is this what you really want, Jack? Are you sure?" Of course. As Jack nods affirmatively, Anna smirks triumphantly.
There's no way Jack would choose leeches like you. As a parting gift, though, make sure to give us a nice wedding gift, okay?
At her words, I made up my mind. I would not let her have her way. My name is Julie. I work as a nurse in a small hospital. I met my husband Eugene at the hospital. Eugene, who wasn't very healthy, was admitted to my hospital for checkups. Although no particular illness was found, we grew close as I gave him advice to maintain his daily life. After his discharge, we started dating and eventually got married. 2 years after our marriage, I became pregnant. Eugene was overjoyed. He respected my desire to continue working after having our child and was eager to help with child rearing. My parents also loved their grandchild. With the support of Eugene and my parents, I was able to balance my nursing job and raising our son Jack. Our family of 3 led a peaceful life. When Jack was in his junior year of high school, he made a big decision. "Mom, Dad, I've decided to go to med school. I want to become a doctor." As someone in the medical field myself, I was very glad when Jack found his passion in medicine, and I wholeheartedly supported him. Jack studied hard and managed to get accepted into med school straight from college. When we broke the news to his grandparents, they were overjoyed as well. However, another turning point was about to come in our household. Eugene decided to take an early retirement from his company. His frail health had always been a problem, and there were many days he couldn't go to work due to sickness. Taking advantage of an early retirement program seemed like the best choice for Eugene, who decided to retire at 55. Our life, with me continuing to work as a nurse and Eugene doing housework at home, went surprisingly smoothly. Jack finished his 4 years at college and was assigned to the university hospital for his residency. Upon hearing the name of the hospital, I was surprised. "Isn't it great? It's the biggest hospital anyone was assigned to out of all my classmates." With Jack boasting so proudly, I felt the need to remind him. "Jack, what's important is what you do, not where you are." But it seemed like my words were just mere nagging to the elated Jack. "I know that. Can't you, a nurse who can only assist doctors like us, just keep quiet?" Jack then completed his residency and decided to work at the university hospital as an internist. Since then, he started going out drinking on his days off and often came home late. It seemed like he was partying with women who were drawn to his title as a doctor at the prestigious university hospital. He always came home reeking of perfume. After about a year of this lifestyle, one day, Jack introduced us to a woman he wanted us to meet. "Hello, soon-to-be father-in-law, mother-in-law." The woman who introduced herself as Anna greeted us without hesitation. "Anna, how did you get to know Jack?" When I asked, Anna answered openly. "I met Jack at a social gathering back in college. I didn't think much of him then, but I reconnected with him after hearing he became a doctor at the university hospital." I see. Anna didn't even try to hide the fact that she was more attracted to the title of a doctor than to Jack himself. Meanwhile, Jack, completely oblivious to this, was grinning at Anna. "I was surprised when Anna suddenly contacted me. She was the most popular girl in our circle, and now she's saying she wants to marry me. Ha ha." As we sat around the table with Anna, the conversation turned to Eugene. "You're a nurse, aren't you, soon-to-be mother-in-law? I heard you met your husband at the hospital, but was he a doctor too?" My husband, Eugene, graciously answered Anna's question. "No, I'm just a regular office worker, although I did take an early retirement, so I'm not working now." "You're not working, so you're unemployed?" Anna's eyebrows furrowed at this revelation. "I don't think you call someone that retired early quite simply unemployed." Eugene tried to laugh it off, but Anna's demeanor suddenly shifted. "If you're jobless, it's the same thing." "What?" Eugene was taken aback by Anna's sudden condescension, but she continued with a scoff. "It's really inconvenient for me to have a mother who's just a nurse and doesn't make much money, along with an unemployed father." "What do you mean inconvenient? Don't you think it's inappropriate to talk like that to us, your soon-to-be in-laws?" I blamed Anna, but she showed no sign of remorse. "Don't get cocky just because your son is a promising future doctor." She sighed heavily and then looked straight at us. "Please don't come to our wedding." "What do you mean?" "The professor from Jack's med school, who's also his boss, is planning to attend our wedding. It would be embarrassing if his parents were just a nurse and an unemployed father." "Hold on, it's absurd for both parents to not be attending their child's wedding." "Just tell everyone you're sick, then no one can complain, right?" "But..." I tried to object, but it was clear that Anna's decision was firm. Eugene then turned to Jack. "What do you think about this, Jack?" "What, me?" Jack, taken by surprise, was at a loss for words. Before Jack could answer, Anna interrupted. Enough is enough. Just because your son is a doctor, you think you can leech off him? That's not going to happen. Anna glared at us, then starts clinging to Jack. I can't stand the idea of your parents taking the money you earn from me, Jack. Please cut ties with your parents. Even Jack seemed taken aback by this declaration. Cut ties? I don't think we have to go that far. But Anna didn't back down. Baby, why won't you listen to me? Are your parents more important to you than me? She exaggerates her crying for effect. Panicked, Jack responded. No, that's not it at all. If it's your request, I'd do anything. Jack, who managed to calm Anna, addressed us with a foolish smile. I apologize, Mom, but I'll have to go with Anna on this one. We're cutting ties with you guys. It seems like Jack is totally manipulated by Anna. Betting on my last hope, I asked Jack, Is that really what you want, Jack? Are you sure about this? Of course. Jack replied with a nod. Anna, looking triumphantly, retorted, There's no way Jack would choose leeches like you. As a parting gift, though, make sure to give us a nice wedding gift, okay? Days later, an invitation for their wedding arrived at our home, with the regretfully declined box already checked. The invitation even had a section saying, Please send your gift cards to the following address. As I was flabbergasted, our home phone rang. It was my father. Julie, we just received an invitation to Jack's wedding, but the regretfully declined box is already checked. It also has an address suggesting us to send gift cards to. What on earth is going on? It appears that Jack and Anna sent the same invitation to my parents as well. Seeing Anna and Jack trying to abandon not only their real parents, but also his grandparents, who loved Jack dearly, I felt a surge of anger. I absolutely won't let things go Anna's way. I told my father about the time Anna came to our house. They're saying they want to cut ties with me. It seems they don't want me at their wedding. Hearing my story, my father was bewildered, but I asked, Dad, I have a request. On the day of the wedding, can you go with me to Jack's ceremony venue? But Jack doesn't want us there, right? I don't intend to attend the ceremony. Apparently a professor from the university hospital, who is also Jack's boss, will be there. I'd like you to tell him about what's happening when you see him at the venue. I see. Okay. If Jack has cut ties with you guys, it's essentially the same as cutting ties with his grandparents as well. My father, who had figured out my plan, willingly agreed to go to the venue with me. In addition to that, I did my best to verify Anna's reputation before the wedding day. The day of the wedding arrived. When my father and I arrived at the venue, Anna and Jack were surrounded by their invited colleagues who were all doctors. I heard your parents are unwell. What a shame, it's your wedding. Well, it is what it is, Jack answered with an awkward smile. A professor approached Jack, also posing the same question. Why isn't your grandfather here? Surely he wasn't left out of the invite list, right? Thank you for your concern about my grandfather. I haven't seen him in years, so it's no big deal. He might even be getting a bit forgetful by now. Unaware of the professor's puzzled expression, Jack remained nonchalant. My father, who had been watching from the sidelines next to me, could no longer contain his frustration and walked over to Jack and his group from behind a pillar. Who did you say is forgetful? At the sound of my father's assertive voice, Jack and Anna turned around. Who is this old man? Beside a puzzled Anna, Jack's eyes went wide. Grandpa, what are you doing here? Then, spotting me beside my father, he became furious. And Mom, too? I told you not to come since we've already cut ties. Jack's superiors glanced between him and my father, whispering amongst themselves. That man is... Yes, indeed. Could it really be him? What does he mean by cutting ties? As the doctors started to murmur, the professor asked Jack in a stern voice. What do you mean by cut ties, Jack? Oh, well, about that. Jack started to panic. Before he could respond, Anna intervened. Jack's jobless father tried to leech off him who has a promising future, she exclaimed before I could rebut. We couldn't let such parasites meet esteemed individuals like you, Professor, so we politely asked them to refrain from attending the wedding. With a look of disdain, Anna continued while glancing at my father and me. I can't believe they actually showed up at the venue. Bringing along a shabby old man like him, did they think they would earn everyone's sympathy? Regardless of the number, parasites are nothing but a nuisance. At the word parasite, Jack's bosses urgently start speaking to Anna. Well, what are you saying, miss? What am I saying? It's the truth, isn't it? Jack agreed that his family shouldn't be invited to the wedding, right, Jack? Yeah, Anna's right. If you think being blood-related means you get away with anything, you're dead wrong. Even if you're family, I won't let them harm my bright future and career. At Jack's confident declaration, the doctors turned pale. Jack, you really don't know, do you? What don't I know? At Jack's surprised look, his boss doctors simultaneously disclose. Your grandfather standing there is the former deputy director of our hospital. What? There's no way, right, Mom? Jack, looking worried, turns to me. I tell him the truth. It's true. Dad was the deputy director of your university hospital. No way, you never mentioned it. Jack looks intently at my father, and my father tells him, I was asked to keep it from you by Julie because we didn't want to put unnecessary pressure on you. Pressure? I explained to Jack. When I became a nurse, my father was already a respected doctor in the hospital. Being the daughter of such a capable man was pressure to me. I didn't want you to feel the same. So you kept it from us? The professor turns to Jack with a stern look. Your grandfather is my mentor. Calling my dear mentor a parasite is extremely offensive. And the fact that you don't even appreciate your parents and family, who've supported you this far, I'm disappointed in you. Under the cold gaze of the professors, Anna rushes to cling to my father and me. We really did want to invite my in-laws. Since you're here, please attend the ceremony. I'm just amazed at Anna's quick change of attitude. I firmly tell Anna, I decline. The only reason we came here today was to make it clear to the guests why we couldn't attend the wedding. We have no intention of attending the ceremony. But we're a family. Don't you care about Jack? Family? Weren't you the one who said you wanted to cut ties with us? We're not a family or anything. We're strangers. My father backs me up. When my daughter cuts ties, that means I lose my connection as a grandfather, too. It seems my daughter has had her say, so we have no more business here. Mom, Grandpa, please wait for me. Jack weakly muttered. The professor, as if to add insult to injury, said, Being a doctor involves facing and working with people. If you can't respect your family and elders, you're not fit to be a doctor. It seems you'd better grow as a person in a local hospital, not in our university hospital. You mean, get yourself transferred to a hospital in our rural network. You mean I'm being sent to the countryside? Anna glares demonically, while looking at Jack, who was stunned. Rural assignment? You must be joking. I only married you because you were working at the university hospital. Anna confronts Jack, shrieking about divorce. I'll make sure you pay alimony. Anna never really intended to support Jack as his wife after all. There was no longer any reason to be considerate of Anna. Anna, you're the one who's going to be paying alimony. My words surprised Anna. She looked at me. What? Why should I have to? Anna, you've been having an affair, haven't you? What? Suddenly, Anna began to panic. What kind of evidence do you have to make such an accusation? I laid out several photos in front of the flustered Anna. They showed Anna snuggling up to an unknown man like a couple, entering a hotel. I asked her classmates about what they thought of you, Anna. They testified about the affair, and I've been investigating ever since. Here's the proof. Upon seeing the photos, Jack started to shake. Anna, you were meeting this man behind my back? It's not what it looks like, Jack. Hear me out. Why should I? I don't want to hear any excuses. Disgusted by their ugly argument, the guests following Jack's father started to leave one after another. The squabble continued until the venue staff had to intervene. By the time they realized, there were only a few guests remaining. The situation was far from conducive for a wedding, so the event was called off. Jack went straight to the city hall to collect divorce papers. I have no intention of continuing to live with a cheater.
No way, without your prestigious university hospital title, you're nothing appealing to me at all. Both stubborn and resentful, the two swiftly went through with their divorce. Subsequently, Jack received an official resignation notice from the hospital and was transferred to a hospital in the country. Working alone in the countryside, Jack seemed to be realizing his own immaturity as a doctor. Anna, on the other hand, had to pay alimony to Jack because the evidence of her affair which I presented became the deciding factor. After distributing her assets during the divorce and using her savings to pay the alimony, Anna, seemingly unrepentant, was spotted lurking around the university hospital, desperately trying to charm young single doctors. However, word of her divorce had spread throughout the hospital, and not a single doctor was willing to fall for Anna's advances. Still, Anna couldn't give up her aspirations to be a wife of a doctor working at the university hospital. She had become quite famous in the hospital as the desperate old lady chasing after doctors. Meanwhile, I've been continuing my job as a nurse. Eugene's health has become stable recently, and he's taken a great interest in cooking as his new hobby. Every time I come home from work, I'm greeted with delicious dinner prepared by my husband. While cherishing this happiness, I made a vow in my heart to continue this life with the ones I love.